This video is about taking an Intermountain F7B DCC unit and DCCizing it by putting in a TCS IMF4 NF decoder. TCS manufactures two decoders for the Intermountain B unit. The older ones have motor clips and the newer ones have solderable wires. This is a newer one, so it has that. Anyway, we're going to go through that. So first up, let's get the decoder out. Take apart everything. Part of what I'm going to go through on here is there's basic steps if you go to the website about how to do this, the TCS website. And if you decide to do Digitrax instead, Digitrax makes a decoder. And if you go to their website, they have similar instructions. In both cases, I think they miss out on some stuff. As a side note, I like this cardboard that it comes in. I keep it around and use it for all sorts of little odd jobs here and there. So, although surprisingly, I guess I don't do anything with the plastic that it came in, but I keep it to recycle anyway. This is the decoder. Take it out of its bag. Just want to make sure that I dispose of the stapler in my garbage can here so it doesn't get picked up by something at the wrong time. And you can see the decoder is relatively straightforward. Let's have a closer look at that. And once we get into the B unit, I'll show you how that fits in. And some of the changes that I've made and additional work that I do because I don't think their instructions are thorough enough. As always, read the instructions. Okay. Now, in the case of the TCS decoder, what I've found is their instructions are basically about operation of the decoder and what the CVs will do and how to program them, whereas the Digitrax instructions when you get a decoder seem to be more focused on installation and then some additional information on how to program the decoder. Anyway, I'm going to put that aside. I've already done a couple of A units and did another B unit earlier. Now these Intermountains, the shell you can just pull off. They're not on overly difficult or tight or anything like that. I don't know whether you saw that or not. The first thing is there's grease on the side here. There's now grease on my finger. One of the things I'm going to be doing here is degreasing the unit. I find these Intermountain units, this will be the fourth one I've done, they all contain way too much grease in them, and that needs to be attended to. Let me double check inside here, and no, I don't see grease on there. The only way these are held in is, you probably can't see, there's a couple of little protrusions there that catch on these little guys here. So it's really easy just to slip those off. Here you can see the original analog board in place, and this board will slip in to replace that. When you match it up, you'll see that I've got it backwards here, and you can tell because although those look the same, these guys are forward, so I'm going to have to slip it around like this and keep these guys forward for the wires to come through and then solder them into those points. So red goes now closest to me, black goes furthest away. In order to get the board off, I'm going to have to desolder it. So step one will be to go ahead while I'm waiting for the soldering iron to heat up. I will grab a Phillips screwdriver so that I can take the screws off. At the right size. Yep, fits good. Okay. Now this is how the unit gets picked up to the board, is through here and through here. So we need to make sure that's going to happen. But on DC, You know, if you get extra power from the frame, it doesn't matter too much. DCC, of course, it will. So, I got it clean. I've been using my soldering iron today. I know it's clean because I'm right-handed. I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to grab this with my fingers. So I grab the wire with my fingers, and then I touch to the solder point, pull up. The reason I use my fingers is if I were applying too much heat, I'd know about it real quick and could stop before I damaged any components. Okay, I'll turn soldering iron off and we'll pull out, take the screws out, we'll set them aside just on the corner here, out of the way of everything, so as I'm moving stuff around I don't accidentally lose one. And then bamboo skewer. I love these guys. Around the corner, cut them in half, round the corners. Pick these up from your grocery store. Hold stuff while I'm soldering, and there's no electrical contact. They're great. If you were doing an A unit, an F7A instead, what you'd find is there'd be a light here, and it'd be soldered to the two pads, and there's a little more clearance up front for that to go through. So, and taking this off, you'd also have to desolder those two. Now, the thing that you'll notice if you look is this is all metal here. Exposed on the bottom of the board here are a number of points of potential contact. These two power pickup points you want exposed, but I don't want the rest exposed. So even though this is elevated slightly, I'm worried that some additional pressure on it may cause it to contact here. So to be safe, I'm going to cover the whole bottom of the board with capped on tape right now. I'm just going to go grab my tape. If you're going to do any conversions at all, buy a roll of capped on tape for the $7 or whatever it costs. It seems, I can't imagine you ever going through it unless you decide to go into business of installing these things. And this is the same width as, just come on, the same width as my capped on tape, so all I need to do, while I'm holding on to it, cut it, whatever methodology works best for you. Just made sure the whole thing's covered. Get a pair of scissors, cut this end flush, and unroll a little more, cut this end flush, and take this and just stick it back on the capped on tape so that I can get a pickup again later. Okay, put that aside, don't need any more of that for now. Now, something to realize with this tape is, as I said before, the motor pickups are here, and they have to pick up here and here. So I need to cut the capped on tape away from there. And you could either do that with a pair of scissors or whatever you happen to have handy. I like, I have a couple of knives. Well, I have more than that, but I mean, I use this one generally. And I keep this as my sharp knife and use it very seldom. That way, well, I don't know if I have to go through. Now when I do this, I cut on the piece of copper so I don't accidentally cut a lead somewhere. And don't press too hard. And then grab a pair of tweezers. Pull the little square of capped on tape off. Do that on both of these. Okay. And get rid of that. So now I have this fully prepared and ready to go in, other than these wires, of course, have to come through these two guys. Remember, that's backwards. One of the ways of telling back from front on this is these two pads are soldered, they're pre-soldered at the front, and the wires have to come straight up. So it's through this, and they're going to get soldered here and here. So I just need to make a little bit of a cut in each of these just to make sure I can get the wires through. I'll just poke a little hole, a little X in each of them. And then, using my bamboo skewer, push up from the bottom to make sure that the wires are going to go through. And if everything goes according to plan, that means I've still left everything completely covered on the bottom. Okay, let's put that aside. If you don't care about engine cleaning, then you're going to want to skip ahead a whole bunch, because that's what's up next. So for engine cleaning on this guy, what I do is complete disassembly. Start with the two screws here. Lay the guy on its side. Keep lots of paper towel around. Remember, there's grease already on the side here. Same thing on this side. Put the bolts aside. They're both same on front and back, don't worry about that. The nuts are embedded in here, they're plastic nuts. Don't lose them, takes a few weeks to get them. The other thing you're going to have to do before you can separate the halves is take the bottom off here. You can see there's a little clip there. We'll just carefully unclip there. Carefully unclip on the other side. In fact, I can see on this one a bit of gray on the outside. You can see what happens once you loosen that off. Everything's loose, it just all kind of falls apart. What I was going to comment on here is a little bit of gray around there, a little bit of gray around there. The rest looks okay, other than there's grease on it, so we'll wipe that off. But it's a chance to inspect that kind of stuff. I can see grease inside, so use the paper towel and get all the grease out that I can from there. Put that aside. Now let me look at the trucks and see what they look like. They don't look too bad. The grease they use is a very, very thin. I just don't want any globs left. And that all looks okay. When I look at the bottom, I'll clean the bottom by doing a rub on it. Clean the bottom by doing a nice rub on it. Pickups. Just clean anything off that may have gotten on it. In the past, when I've gotten these, I've seen big globs of grease down in here, and I've used Q-tips and disassembled the trucks, but this one isn't going to require that. So now to take the rest of it apart, you just pull it off, maybe shake it a little bit. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about. We'll zoom in a little bit more here. Grease there. There's no reason for there to be grease there whatsoever. I can see it's sopping with grease in there. When I look, here's the opposite side. Grease there. I can see where there's been grease in various places where it shouldn't have been. So we'll take everything else off, and if it was super bad, I guess I'd go ahead and wash it with soapy water and blow it dry, but it's not quite that bad. So we'll take this. This is the front coupler and assembly that isolates the two frame halves. Get all the grease off of that. Pull this one off. So I'm going to go through and clean it here. I'm just going to fast forward through everything so you can see basically what I'm doing, but it takes a while to clean it. I just go over everything with a paper towel and or a Q-tip and get all the grease I can out of it, and then at the end we'll start assembling it. Any residual grease on it as well. Now, one of the things when we reassemble the halves, just to show you, we're going to reassemble them like this, and the wires are going to come up through here. That means this is going to fit in like that, and the wires will come up here. And what I'm concerned about, if I just put this back in, if you see down here, don't want that. Look down there. I'm worried that there may be a potential contact point there. So I want to wrap this in Kapton to make sure. And in order to do that, I will pop the motor out, and you just have to go like, eh. You see it's in its little carrying cage there. Comes out like that. And I want a strip of Kapton tape that will go around here. Be careful doing this. These are small clips that hold the springs that press against the brushes that contact the armature to make the motor go. So you don't want to screw stuff around there. Yeah, like there's a great job that's been done there. Part of what I'm going to do is with my hands is I'll bend that in, which will lessen any potential contact. And then I want a strip of Kapton tape to go around there, about that wide. Don't want it too wide, but okay, now what I do, I have Kapton tape on my layout here, just on the green board, and I just lay out a strip and then I cut pieces off as I need it. And I'm just going to go by eye and see guy. Now I really only want this to come up the side, but if I put it all the way around, it will hold better. Remember the amount of grease I was showing you earlier? Well, all of that in there, I'm not... Okay, so pressing the Kapton tape on, back into the motor mount. And now you can see I've got tape covering that lead and tape covering that lead. So when this motor goes back in, as it will like this, you can see that the Kapton tape is there, and that'll prevent any potential short/contact. In order to get this in, you kind of have to do everything together here. So this is the back coupler. I'm going to put the back coupler in. That's as an insulator. This is the front one. You can tell the difference because this here has been manufactured for the light on the A unit, and there's a little recess for it, so that goes in like that. Now we'll put the dog bone connector and assemble all this first. Do a little spin test, make sure everything seems to be working, and then yeah, well, it didn't quite work out the way I thought it was going. Anyway, we'll drop that guy in, partially in. Connect the front block. Make sure all the little pieces are going in fine. Do the same thing on the rear. Okay, now motors in. Everything's looking okay. Yep, everything spins all right. So put the two insulators on, and then this part of the motor goes on, or sorry, frame goes on like that. Make sure everything looks good. Yep. Now we'll take and get these started. Well, in fact, feels like we're doing them up mostly. Okay, I'm not going to quite do them up tight yet because I still need to put the trucks in. So, of course, you look to see which way these go in. See, this one has a bit of dark streak on it. I'm going to get some rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip. Clean these guys a little bit better. Yeah, it looks like paint overspray, in fact. So because of that, let me just clean this other one off. And these are just going to go in like either that way or that way. And you can figure out which way because they only fit one way. It's the beauty of it. So that'll go in like that. The other one, it's actually this one that I care about. When it goes in, The overpaint spray, not really worried about because it's closest to the body, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to see if I can easily clean it off with an emery board. Yeah, it's coming off just fine. Now you can't see that. With rubbing alcohol, I'll rub it on the top of the contacts from the trucks. Now, I've already run this in. Put it on my DCC track. Ran it for an hour, forwards, backwards, top speed, slow speed. No problems with it. So, not really concerned about pickup. If I were having pickup problems, I would have noticed it already. Did notice a little bit of leftover stuff from my Q-tip there. Remembering how greasy these things are, they will attract stuff. I don't know what'll happen long term, but may have to disassemble to clean. Okay, so now working on the bottom. Brass contact strips, copper, whatever the heck they are, and put the gas tank on to hold them. It only goes on one way. There's a bar there, has to fit in there. So once these guys are on, just clip that in. Make sure that everything's clipped properly. Yep, everything's good, springy. Look at the trucks. Is there an arrow on them? Sometimes there are. Cato does that. Okay, Intermountain doesn't. I don't think it matters which side is which. So when you look at the side of the truck, there is no difference. So we'll just put it in. And I'm going to line up the gearbox so it's on the same side on each one. What I mean by that is gearbox there and there as opposed to that one being on that side. Then I'll finish tightening up the screws on the side. And we're now degreased. Okay, so let's go back to our DCC install, which is what we started out with here. In order to do that, I'm going to want to solder to these guys. In order to solder to them, I am going to want to have a drink of my coffee. I need to tin them first. So to do that, I get a little bit of flux. Get my piece of wood, and I just use this for soldering and well, a ton of uses. It's another handy tool. Apply a little bit of solder to the middle of where I'm going to be soldering, or sorry, a little bit of flux. These guys have already been tinned, so don't have to worry about them. Make sure you got a nice clean solder iron, whatever your cleaning methodology is. Okay, so that's that one done. That's that one done. Yeah, a little more to it. Okay, not too long with that soldering iron. You don't want to screw things up. Just in looking at the board here, I'm noticing that this particular board has an interesting piece of wire here that goes from there to there. Don't know why. In any case, now it's time to put this back in through the holes. Whoop, everything fits in there. Wires, make sure nothing's trapped anywhere. Back to the little screws that I have. And now I got to find my screwdriver that I was using. That's over here. Remember, when you're starting screws like this, just put the first one in loose. That lets the board move around a tiny bit so that you can, it makes it easier to get the second one in case there's some kind of a misalignment between the frame. In this case, there's none. Fits perfectly. As anything you torque, you do a little on one, a little on the other, till it's torqued down to where you want it to be. Then we need to solder these guys in, and because everything's pre-tinned, this should go with just a little bit of heat. And that's it. Same with this guy. That's it. Okay, so soldering's done. And before I put the cab on, I want to go try it out. So that's where we're off to next. Okay, so here we have an Ecos ESU, I can't remember the number on it. Anyway, their most recent command station. And I'm using that on my test track, so I'm going to punch in Loco, and I want number 03, and we'll do a tick mark on that. Now you can see I've got Loco 3 selected, and I'm going to just put it on the mainline track, and here is Loco on my little Kato make sure you get it on right thingy. Okay, so now we're on the track okay on my test system. You can see I've got, I'll step back here, but that's what my test track looks like. It's currently under construction, but I do have a loop there that I can run DCC on. So let's see what happens now as I do a go for track power and switch to forward, and whoop, it goes. So as I increase throttle, F7 units aren't tremendously fast, but they go well. So we'll slow it down. See what happens in reverse. Goes well in reverse. So DCC install is done, degrease is done. The only thing left on this B unit is to put the cab on and make sure it's running okay as well. Okay, so the cab is now, unit is now on. So you can see that, and when I go forward, backwards, it goes backwards. And forwards goes forwards. So, to say, another successful DCC conversion. Wasn't all that painful. Took a lot more time to clean it than it did anything else. Thanks for watching, and now I'm on to speed matching another thing with my A version, but that's a different video.